Hello. I am going to begin a series of where I just shoot on a lot of things. Now, for some of you that don't know what a shoot is, it's basically saying how you feel. And sometimes if you want to mention names, you're free to do so. But if you just want to kind of give hints or just kind of acknowledgments of what you mean, that's also what a shoot is about. And what I want to shoot about, ladies and gentlemen, in this shoot series of mine is comic books. You know, I've been a comic book fan for a long time, and I've been a fan of various comic books. They all range from publications like Marvel to DC, who are the two top comic book companies in the world. I guess you could consider them the WWE, TNA, the UFC, Strikeforce, the NFL, the major leagues, if you will, of comic books. And right behind them are publications like Archie Comics, which have been around just as long. So you could probably say there's your top three. But the two that surpassed even Archie Comics are Marvel and DC. Others out there are like Top Cow, Boom Studios, Wildstorm, Radio Comics, and a few others. But the thing about comic books, even nowadays, folks, is the storylines, the story arcs, the anniversary issues. You see, folks, anytime an anniversary issue, for example, comes around, it either marks the end of a current story arc or the beginning of one. That is true. Sometimes it means we're starting a new story arc that's going to last maybe a few more issues, and then it's going to end. Or maybe we're starting a story arc that's going to take a year to complete. Or in some cases, maybe 2 or 3. And in other cases, an anniversary issue could mean the end of a story arc. It could mean the end of 3 to 4 years, or maybe a few months worth of storytelling, and finally it comes to an end. But the one thing about anniversaries and story arcs, ladies and gentlemen, whether these story arcs begin in anniversary issues and they last for who knows how long, or they end in an anniversary issue after lasting for who knows how long. The one thing about them, folks, which sticks out to a lot of people, is the fact that something major always occurs in them. And what I mean by that, folks, what I mean by the fact that something major always occurs is that something always life-changing or comic book changing overall takes place. Whether it's the change in the atmosphere, overall atmosphere and tone of the comic, whether it's the introduction of a new villain or new hero or a new member of a team, whether it's a villainous team or a heroic team, or probably the most popular of them all, the death of a character. That's right. Some anniversary issues either end or begin with a character either dying or having their life hang in the balance until after the next few issues. Some of them have the character die or have their life hanging in the balance for the next few years. And sometimes it's a character that we don't consider that important. They might be semi-major, if you will. And if that character survives, it's great. If we're a fan of that character. Or if that character dies, it bothers us. And if we're a fan, it may bother us a little bit. But then we get over it. But if that character is a major league character, folks, then that's where really the shit hits the fan. Because there are fan bases out there for certain characters in different comic books by different publications that I've mentioned that when that character is considered a candidate going into that anniversary issue, which will either end a certain long-term story arc or even a short-term story arc or begin one, the debate is always asked and talked about, why is this character being targeted, or why is this character being considered? And when said character possibly is revealed to be that character, if not somebody else, said character if you will, and that was my cat in the background, I'm sorry about that, but said character, if you will, always ends up in a situation we don't expect. But again, the question is always debated and asked, why is this character being targeted? Could it be that character? Could it be somebody else? We look at past issues of different publications of comic books or throughout the years and decades, and we say to ourselves that these characters have survived, and yet all these other characters that have survived by a thread. But then sometimes the unexpected does happen, and said character and one of the said popular characters in a comic book does die. Does it make people upset? Of course it does. Do people get over it? Of course they do. But yet, it doesn't help. The fact that they, being a major league fan of those characters, or that character, has to move on as a subscriber or a buyer of a comic book or a graphic novel of said comic book and realize that they will never see that character again. There is one comic book being published right now, currently by Archie Comics. It has been published for nearly 20 years. Nearly 20 years, folks, that this comic book has been around. It's in its 18th year. Next year will be its 19th. 2013 will be its 20th. And a lot of people have been speculating for the past few months as to what major character or semi-major character could be having their life hang in the balance, could be the one getting the axe, possibly. See, the current writer of this comic has come out and said that there will be a character whose life will hang in the balance. There will be a character who could be leaving the comic book for good. And usually when this writer kills off a character, whether they're a major or a semi-major character, that character remains dead. Now, numerous names have come up throughout the past few months. Some have pointed out one character because of the sheer hatred for that character and feel that the comic book would be better off without them. Others have pointed out another character because of the situations currently that this character has been portrayed in recent issues. But yet nobody knows. And a lot of people feel as we get inch closer and closer to that issue, to that anniversary issue, fans start to get this queasy feeling in the pit of the stomach that it could be one said character. And yet, if it is, folks, what do we do? What do we do, folks? Excuse me for a second. I apologize for that interruption, folks. Had to let the cat back in the garage. But like I said, what do we do if that said character, that many fans have a queasy feeling in their stomach as they get inch closer and closer each day to that release of that issue? What do we do if it is that said character, whose life hangs in the balance? Who could be the one that gets the axe? Well, many have said that we have traveled this road before. Indeed, we have. We have traveled this road before, folks. 14 years ago, we traveled almost a similar road. See, 14 years ago, a former head writer of this comic book created a 4-part issue which led into the 50th anniversary issue. Now, there were many things that were rolled into the reasoning as to why this road was taken at that time. The reason was many felt that the 50th anniversary issue of this comic book would be the final issue of it. And by taking this same said character that is being considered a strong candidate for the possible similar role that could be played, similar gambit, if you will, that could be played in the 225th issue. The reason this character was put in that situation was for one reason, folks. One reason. And it's the same, just as I mentioned. It is because many felt that the comic was going to come to an end in its 50th issue. Many felt that taking this character out of the equation would benefit, in a way, the comic book. In fact, said writer who tried doing this said that they wanted to do it so that this character would not lose the fans in any way. But what this said writer underestimated was the fact that the largeness of the fan base and the support that it didn't just get from the fan base, but from those that the character belongs to. Now, you fast forward 175 issues later, and a lot of people come out and they have their own reasoning as to why it could be the said character. Some say they hear it from the underground. Some say that current head writer was shocked by the approval of said franchise company or said company that owned franchise. But the thing is, could this all be true? You see, certain comic book writers, novel writers, what they do, ladies and gentlemen, is they like to throw what is known as red herrings. And whether they want to come out on the message boards or not and admit the truth. Basically grow a set, if you will, and admit the truth that what they're doing is throwing red herrings. Then none of us will ever get a straight answer. You know, some say that the 4-part story arc that takes place after 225, the 225th issue of said comic book, and ends and that this 4-part arc goes from the 226th issue, runs into the 227th issue, 228th and 229th, until we're finally back into normal continuity in the 230th. A lot of people say it's a soft reboot. Some say it's an experimental reboot. And everybody questions, what does this have to do with one said character's life hanging in the balance? And then that is where the clues come together. You see, certain comic book writers for certain comic books of different publications that I've mentioned at the beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, these people